in the sprawling grounds of Willow Creek Zoo, nestled in the rolling hills of a fictional English countryside, the jungle exhibit was the crown jewel of the park. Lush greenery spilled over rocky outcrops, mist rose from a cascading waterfall, and the air hummed with the calls of exotic birds. At the heart of this meticulously crafted habitat lived a family of western lowland gorillas. It's a troop that drew crowds daily with their striking presence and surprisingly human-like behaviors. On a crisp autumn morning in 2025, the sun bathed the enclosure in golden light, and the zoo buzzed with visitors eager to catch a glimpse of the star of the show, Kibo, the silverback patriarch. Kibo was a magnificent creature, his broad shoulders and gleaming silver back a testament to his strength and authority. At 350 pounds, he was a towering figure, yet his deep brown eyes held a quiet wisdom that spoke of patience and care. That morning, Kibo lounged on a grassy knoll, his massive hands folded over his chest, soaking in the warmth of the sun. I'd spent the early hours gathering armfuls of straw and soft branches to line the family's sleeping area. A task he performed with the diligence of a seasoned leader. Now, with the work done, he sought a moment of peace, his heavy eyelids drooping as he basked in the rare calm. The visitors, a mix of families, school groups, and curious tourists, pressed against the thick glass barrier, their cameras clicking furiously. To them, Kibo was the embodiment of raw power, a living relic of the wild. Children pointed in awe, whispering about his size, while adults marveled at the serene dignity he exuded. But to one particular member of his troop, Kibo was something far simpler, yet infinitely more significant. He was Dad, Kibo's youngest son. Tano, a wiry 6-year-old gorilla with a mischievous glint in his dark eyes, saw his father's rest. As an opportunity, gorillas, much like humans, share a remarkable 98% of their DNA, and their family dynamics often mirror our own. Just as human children delight in testing their parents' patience, Tano and his older brother Jomo thrived on playful antics that kept the enclosure lively. The two brothers were inseparable, their days filled with tumbling chases, mock battles, and the kind of boundless energy that only youth could sustain. Usually, they were content to entertain each other, leaving their parents to manage the weightier responsibilities of the troop. But on this particular morning, Tano had other plans. The zoo staff, who knew the gorillas' personalities as well as their own, noticed the telltale signs of mischief brewing. Tano and Jomo exchanged a conspiratorial glance, their eyes darting toward their dozing father. Sarah, a seasoned keeper with a knack for reading the gorilla's moods, nudged her colleague Tom and whispered, "Get your phone ready. This is going to be good." The keepers had seen this look before, a spark of youthful defiance that promised a memorable moment. As Jomo hung back, content to watch from a safe distance, Tano took the lead, his small frame bouncing with barely contained excitement. Tano crept closer to Kibo, his movements exaggeratedly cautious, as if he were a spy in a game of his own. The silverback's eyes were closed, his breathing slow and rhythmic, but Tano knew better than to underestimate his father's awareness. Kibo's senses were finely tuned, honed by years of leading his family through the challenges of zoo life. Still, Tano was determined to stir the pot. He positioned himself just inches from Kibo's resting spot, feigning interest in a patch of grass as if it were the most fascinating thing in the enclosure. The crowd chuckled softly, sensing the young gorilla's intent. Kibo cracked one eye open, his gaze landing on Tano with a mix of amusement and exasperation. It was a look any parent would recognize, the universal expression of, "Really? Now?" Tano, undeterred, shuffled closer, his small hands fidgeting as he pretended to inspect the ground. The visitors leaned in, their whispers turning to giggles as Tano's antics unfolded. Kibo let out a low, rumbling huff, a sound that was half chuckle, half warning. It was as if he were saying, "I see you, little one, and I'm not impressed." Gorillas, like humans, have a keen sense of social dynamics, and Kibo's gentle demeanor was well known among the staff. Despite his imposing size, he was a patient father, quick to indulge his son's playful nature. But Tano was pushing his luck. The young gorilla began to bounce on his heels, his movements growing bolder as he darted in and out of Kibo's personal space. The crowd's laughter grew louder, egging him on, and Tano reveled in the attention. Then, in a stroke of inspiration, Tano's eyes fell on the pile of wood shavings scattered near the sleeping area. The soft golden flakes were a favorite toy for the young gorillas, perfect for tossing, piling, or on this day wearing. With a gleeful squeal, Tano scooped up a handful and balanced it precariously on his head, strutting around like a crowned prince. The visitors erupted in laughter, their cameras flashing as Tano paraded his makeshift hat with all the pride of a monarch. Even Sarah, the keeper, couldn't suppress a grin as she filmed the scene, knowing it would be a hit on the zoo's social media. Kibo, still hoping to salvage his nap, kept his eyes closed, his massive chest rising and falling with deliberate calm. He seemed to be employing the age-old parenting strategy of ignoring the behavior in hopes it would stop. But Tano was relentless. Emboldened by the crowd's reaction, he crept to the low wooden barrier that separated him from his father's resting spot. With the stealth of a seasoned prankster, he reached through the gaps in the fence, snatching handfuls of Kibo's carefully gathered wood shavings. Each theft was a small victory, and Tano's eyes sparkled with delight as he added the stolen shavings to his crown. The tension in the enclosure was palpable, a silent battle of wills between father and son. Kibo's eyes flicked open, locking onto Tano's, with a look that was equal parts patience and warning. The crowd held its breath, sensing the shift in mood. Tano, oblivious to the mounting pressure, continued his game, his small fists pounding playfully on the barrier. The sound echoed like a challenge, a young gorilla testing the boundaries of his father's authority. Kibo had reached his limit. With a single thunderous knock on the barrier, he silenced Tano's drumming. The sound reverberated through the enclosure, a clear signal that the silverback's patience was wearing thin. Tano froze, his bravado faltering under his father's intense gaze. For a moment, the two gorillas stared at each other, their eyes locked in a wordless conversation that spoke of hierarchy, respect, and the delicate balance of family life. The visitors, caught up in the drama, watched in awe. Kibo's presence was commanding, his authority undeniable, yet there was no malice in his actions. He was a father teaching a lesson, not a tyrant asserting dominance. Tano, perhaps sensing he'd gone too far, backed off slightly, his movements hesitant. But, like any child, he couldn't resist one final push. Turning his back on Kibo, he casually plucked at the grass, pretending to be engrossed in his task while inching closer to his father's resting spot. Jomo, the older brother, peeked out from behind a boulder, his expression one of cautious curiosity. The zoo staff later remarked that it looked as if Jomo was assessing whether Tano had crossed a line. The younger gorilla's antics were entertaining, but even Jomo seemed to sense that the game was about to take a serious turn. Then came the moment that would define the day. Kibo, his patience finally exhausted, made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of charging or roaring as the crowd half expected, the silverback reached for a handful of wood shavings. With deliberate slowness, he placed them on his own head, mimicking Tano's earlier antics. The gesture was both playful and profound, a moment of parental surrender wrapped in love. It was as if Kibo were saying, "Fine, I'll play your game, but only for a moment." The crowd erupted in joyous laughter, their cheers filling the air. Tano, caught off guard by his father's participation, let out a delighted hoot. He scrambled to gather more shavings, piling them high on his head in an attempt to outdo Kibo. The two gorillas, father and son, stood side by side, their crowns of shavings a symbol of their bond. The visitors were beside themselves, snapping photos and videos as the scene unfolded. For a fleeting moment, the enclosure was a stage for a heartwarming display of family connection. But as any parent knows, indulging a child's antics can backfire. Kibo's moment of playfulness only fueled Tano's energy. The young gorilla, now convinced he had his father's full attention, escalated his behavior. He began to leap around the enclosure, tossing shavings into the air and letting out high-pitched calls that echoed off the rocks. Jomo, sensing an opportunity, joined in, and soon the brothers were a whirlwind of chaos, their playful roughhousing threatening to undo Kibo's hard-won calm. Kibo let out a deep huff, his massive frame tensing. He rose to his feet, his movements slow but deliberate, and the crowd fell silent. The air crackled with anticipation as the silverback's demeanor shifted. He had given Tano his moment, but now it was time to reassert control. With a sudden burst of speed, Kibo charged across the enclosure, his powerful strides shaking the ground. Tano and Jomo froze, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. The charge was more show than substance, a calculated display of authority rather than an act of aggression. Kibo stopped short of his sons, his chest heaving as he let out a low, rumbling growl. The message was clear. Enough was enough. Tano, his earlier bravado gone, let out a soft whimper and scurried to the edge of the enclosure, his small frame trembling. Jomo, ever the cautious one, retreated to a safe distance, watching his father with newfound respect. The visitors, who had been holding their breath, exhaled in relief. The zoo staff exchanged knowing glances, accustomed to Kibo's ability to balance discipline with care. Silverback's actions were a reminder that, while he was a gentle giant, he was still a wild animal with instincts that demanded respect. Tano, chastened but unharmed, kept his distance, his eyes fixed on his father as if committing the lesson to memory. As the crowd dispersed, still buzzing with excitement over the day's events, a new tension began to simmer in the enclosure. Unbeknownst to the visitors, a more serious issue was brewing within the gorilla family. Kibo's mate, Nia, had been unusually subdued in recent days, her normally vibrant energy replaced by a quiet lethargy. The zoo's veterinary team had noticed the change and, after a thorough examination, diagnosed her with a mild respiratory infection. The illness was treatable, but it required Nia to be separated from the troop for a short period to ensure her recovery. The separation was hard on the family. Tano and Jomo, accustomed to their mother's gentle presence, grew restless in her absence. Kibo, ever the steadfast leader, took on the role of both parents, his watchful eyes tracking his son's every move. The boys, sensing the shift in their family dynamic, became even more rambunctious, their playful antics a way of coping with their mother's absence. When Nia finally returned to the enclosure, her recovery nearly complete, the reunion was a joyful one. Tano and Jomo rushed to her side, her small hands reaching out to touch her fur as if to reassure themselves that she was truly back. Nia, her strength returning, responded with soft grunts and gentle touches, her maternal instincts undimmed by her illness. But the boys' excitement soon got the better of them. During a particularly energetic game of chase, Tano accidentally collided with Nia, sending her stumbling. The incident was minor, but it was enough to rouse Kibo's protective instincts. He rose to his feet, his massive frame casting a shadow over the enclosure. With a deep, resonant growl, he fixed Tano with a stern glare, his eyes conveying a clear message: be careful. Tano, caught off guard by his father's reaction, froze, his playful demeanor replaced by a look of remorse. He retreated to a corner of the enclosure, his head bowed as he processed the weight of his mistake. Kibo's response was not one of anger, but of guidance. He understood that Tano was young, his energy boundless, but he also knew that lessons learned early would shape his son's character. Nia, sensing the tension, reached out to Tano, her gentle touch a reminder of the love that bound their family together. Slowly, Tano returned to his mother's side, his movements cautious but affectionate. In the days that followed, the gorilla family settled back into their routine, their bonds strengthened by the challenges they had faced. Tano and Jomo continued their playful antics, but there was a new sense of respect in their interactions. With Kibo and Nia, the silverback's lessons, delivered with a mix of patience and authority, had left their mark, teaching the young gorillas the importance of boundaries and care. The visitors to Willow Creek Zoo continued to flock to the jungle exhibit, drawn by the story of Kibo and his sons. The video of Tano's wood-shaving crown and Kibo's unexpected participation went viral, shared across social media with captions praising the gorilla family's relatable dynamics. But for those who knew the troop best, the keepers, the vets, and the regular visitors, the true story was one of love, patience, and the enduring power of family. Kibo, ever the watchful patriarch, continued to guide his sons with a steady hand. Tano, now a little wiser, still found ways to test his father's patience. But he did so with a newfound awareness of the lessons he was learning. Jomo, the quieter of the two, watched and learned, his own path shaped by the example of his father's strength and compassion. As the seasons changed and the years passed, the gorilla family at Willow Creek Zoo remained a testament to the universal truths of family life. Through mischief and mistakes, laughter and lessons, Kibo and his troop reminded everyone who watched them that even in the heart of a zoo, the wild spirit of love and connection thrived. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.